Welcome to a Legendarium special about the Song of Roland, Norman England's great epic poem. In the year 1066, Duke William of Normandy invaded England and did battle with King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. Duke William hesitated at first, and the Normans seemed to have last-minute nerves. Suddenly, a man named Taillefer rode out of the Norman lines. The minstrel rode towards the English doing a juggling act with his sword and lance. For a time, the English enjoyed the show, and then the minstrel Taillefer threw his lance at the English and killed a huscarl. His stunt restored Norman spirits, they charged, and the rest is very well-known history. Taillefer would be written out of the Bayeux tapestry, likely because his masters did not want their so-called little servant showing them up. After the Normans carved up England and built their infamous castles, they also erected upper galleries where minstrels like Taillefer performed for them. These rough and ready Norman knights had little interest in courtly love or magical quests that would appear in later medieval poems. Rather, they preferred stories about men like themselves, killing men like those they killed last summer. In the halls of Norman lords, minstrels performed on a balcony above the dining halls of their masters. That allowed for better acoustics and kept lower-class minstrels from rubbing shoulders with those who called themselves their betters. This also meant minstrels doubled as spies, keeping an eye on who talked to who. Of course, their cover remained singing chansons de geste, or songs of great deeds. The most popular chanson de geste of the 12th century became the Song of Roland. The poem's probable author is a Norman poet named Roland, whose name is introduced in its last line. Since he obviously did not witness the events he described, Roland claimed to have learned of Roland through chronicles. This is a common practice among medieval poets who did not want to admit to writing fiction but claimed they merely preserved an older story. Nonetheless, Roland's audience accepted the fanciful and often ahistorical tale as fact. It is written to be symmetrical and centers around four great scenes which balance each other. At over 4,000 lines, it included repetitions and rhymes to help minstrels remember their lyrics. It begins with a crime and ends with a punishment that brings the world back to order. The poem uses the historical Battle of Roncesvalles in 778 as its subject and the revered 8th century Frankish Emperor Charlemagne as a leading character. The battle is an unimportant skirmish between Charlemagne's Franks and Basque rebels. Of course, the poem transforms Roncesvalles into a huge battle against the Saracens, a combination of the Greek battle at Thermopylae and the Crusades that the Normans helped to fight at the time. Never mind that Charlemagne spent most of his time fighting Saxons and never really fought Saracens, this sounded better to Norman ears. The poem opens with Charlemagne's army fighting the Muslims in Spain. Muslims are portrayed as worshipping Mohammed, Termagant, and Apollo, a Greek god, mirroring the Christian Trinity but with evil idols. Never mind that the Muslims are monotheists like Christians. Early medieval Christians saw Islam, which they knew little about, as another form of paganism. Back in the poem, the last Muslim-held city is Saragossa, held by the Muslim king Marsila. A terrified Marsila sends messengers to Charlemagne, promising treasure and even Marsila's conversion to Christianity if the Franks go home. A weary Charlemagne agrees to accept this offer, and the recklessly brave Roland nominates his stepfather Ganlon as messenger. Ganlon convinces himself that Roland wants to have him killed, for he has long hated and envied his stepson. Upon his arrival, the traitor Ganlon tells the Saracens how they could ambush the rear guard of Charlemagne's army. And upon his return, To the Frankish camp, just as Ganlon predicted, the courageous Roland volunteers to lead the rearguard, choosing his wise friend Olivier and a fierce archbishop named Turpin to join him. Just as Ganlon and the Saracens planned, the rearguard is attacked in a mountain pass. In keeping with early medieval practice, the two sides exchange threats and boasts before their bloody business begins. Seeing how badly outnumbered they are, Olivier asks Roland to blow his olifant, a horn made from an elephant tusk, to call for help. Roland, obsessed with fame, refuses to do so, claiming that they need no help. Nonetheless, the battle turns against the Franks. When he realizes that he is going to die, Roland blows his olifant anyway, so that Charlemagne can avenge him. Roland blows so hard that his temples burst, and then he hurls his holy sword, Durendal, into a nearby cliff. He dies a glorious martyr's death, and saints take his soul straight to paradise. The pagans try to remove Durendal from the cliff face, but by God's will cannot. When Charlemagne and his men reach the battlefield, they only find mangled corpses, but Charlemagne later finds the Saracens. In one of the few romantic moments, Charlemagne pledges eternal love and loyalty to his sword, which happens to be Joyeux. Joyeux changes colors 30 times a day and shines so bright it outshines the sun. With Joyeux, Charlemagne drives the Saracens into the Ebro River, where they drown. While the Franks bury their dead, the Emir of Babylon, Balagant, arrives. This is unlikely in real life, as Babylon is hundreds of miles from Spain. It seems that plot holes are nothing new. The poet praises Balagant with the lyric, "God, what a lord, if he were but a Christian." Both sides fight until Charlemagne kills Balagant and the Saracens flee. Charlemagne returns to Aix, his capital in France. Ganlon is kept in chains until his trial, where Ganlon insists that he sought rightful revenge. When this argument fails, Ganlon asks his friend Pinabel to challenge a hostile counselor named Theory to a duel that will decide the outcome of the trial. With God's help, the weaker Theory triumphs, and Charlemagne orders Ganlon's legs and arms tied to 4 horses who are set to gallop, and they tear Ganlon to pieces. For good measure, Charlemagne hangs 30 of Ganlon's relations, which the poem shows no disapproval of, a reminder that the poet lived in an age of casual bloodlust. It is also a reminder that the audience saw fierce loyalty as the greatest virtue, and there is no crime greater than betraying one's emperor. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.